Hi everybody, it's Zariya. Check my voice, it's so much better. How are you? So I'm going live on my personal page, my business page, and the different groups that I have to answer the questions for those of you who are in the Tame the Triggers workshop that I've been sent. And I'm really looking forward to answering your questions. This is live and public for those of you who have not signed up. You will see the link at the top, and I'm doing 2 Q&As next week. So any personal questions you've got, come and ask me. The first one that there is that I so want to address, which is essential, is your parents, if they abused you, did not do their best. So often when we confront our parents, they dismiss it by saying, but I did the best that I could. No, if you did the best that you could, it wouldn't be abuse. So if I went and smacked my daughter, that's not me being my best. My best would be researching how to parent effectively, how to teach skills, how to work through emotions. That would be the best. The reality is, your parents did what they could with the programming that they had. That's a place that we can have compassion for. But when we say something like, the parents did the best that they could, then there is nothing that they could improve on from that. The best is the best. And when we think that, then we often turn it on ourselves that if they did their best and I received that treatment, I must have been the worst. And that's not the reality. As a little kid, you were being a little kid. As a little kid, we make mistakes, we are testing things, we're learning schema that are really weird of barricading things, covering things, unpacking, repacking, because we're learning dropping things, we're learning all about life. We're doing natural kid things. And as a parent, our job is to meet the child with love and care and goodness. And we need to remember that a parent was not doing the best, because when we do that to ourselves, we are invalidating our experience. And people say that in a way to just take away any responsibility and go, well, I did my best, so there we go. There's no remorse, there's no healing, there's no care in that. And as a parent, instead of saying, if you've made mistakes, well, I did my best in that time, there's no responsibility in that. What's healthier is to go, I got that wrong. I didn't meet you in the ways you needed to be met. I didn't love you in the ways you needed to be loved, and I am deeply, deeply sorry. Now, I'm going to be answering the questions, the other questions that I've got for the folk in the Tame the Triggers workshop. And if you haven't asked a question you want to, you'll be able to see above, and I can see them live as we're going through them. So ask away and I will answer them. As a parent now, I want you, and those of you who are watching who are not in Tame the Triggers, you'll see the link there to join us, and you'll be able to ask a question for the next Q&A. There's one more thing that I want to say about a parent saying, I've done my best, is when they do that and they don't take responsibility, it leaves you with this sense of like it's just left you in this puddle of unmetness. So I want you, if you have heard your parents say to you, or other people say, well, I'm sure your mother did their best, or your father did their best, or whoever did their best, I want you to look at little you and say, you deserve better than this. That they didn't have the capacity to do that is not your fault. And I understand it hurt and it made you angry and upset. You didn't deserve that. And in that, there is relief and being met and heard as this little girl. All right, let's look at the first question. This is now question number 2. I have not felt worthy for most of my life. What is the first step in dealing with that? So, feeling unworthy comes out of being treated like you are not worthy of love and care and goodness. And when we feel unworthy, it's because we have believed how other people have treated us is what we deserve. So what we first need to do is understand what emotional abuse is, so we know this is the impact of emotional abuse and not the truth. So a lot of people look at physical abuse, sexual abuse, and they go, well, that's very clear, that's wrong and bad. You can't hit people, beat people, you can't have sex with children or adults without consent. That's not okay. We know that that's not okay. But emotional abuse is so woven in to the world that we just tolerate it as reality. But it has huge impact on people. Massive impact. And I'm happy to share in the Tame the Triggers group a little thing that I did on the impact. I've got a little picture somewhere of all the different feelings that people feel from emotional abuse, so that you can see how many of those things you've felt along the way, so you know that it's not your fault. Because when we are going through that, we think, well, I must be bad that I'm being treated this way. And it's very, very subtle. So I've got the little link, and I will share it into the Tame the Triggers group. It's things like feeling unlovable and unworthy, not trusting yourself, and a low self-worth. Oh dear, my coughing has started. So what I want you to know is that the more that you research emotional abuse, what it is, and the impact of it, the more you come to know that it's not you. Because when you've internalized that you deserve that, then you think it's your fault. So as soon as I could look at myself, and then I want you to look at the little you. In the Tame the Triggers workshop yesterday and the day before, we were looking at what do our little inner children look like, and let's even have a picture of them so we can see who we're doing this work for. And we can turn to that little part of ourselves and say, what you had is emotional abuse. And emotional abuse can, on the one side, be very, very extreme, like vindictive bullying, destroying somebody by humiliating, criticizing, threatening, scaring, shouting at them, mocking and shaming, and always being the subject of jokes, so you just think that you're utterly useless. But on the other side, it can be more subtle, where it's just dismissing what you feel. And you say, Mom, I had a bad day. Well, you think you had a bad day. I had a worse day. And then you're just like, oh, my feelings are worth nothing. Other people's feelings are worth something. Or it might be ignoring you when you come in the room, but greeting another child. So that's what would happen to me as a kid. I would walk into the room, my dad wouldn't look up, my brother would look up, walk in the room, and my father would go, oh, my son. So I just knew I was worthless. Because if I was worth something, he would look up, wouldn't he? So when you can identify, this is emotional abuse that I went through, then you know this is the impact of emotional abuse. This is not what I deserved, but that's what happened, and that is the consequence of that. So you ask, what is the first step? The first step is understanding what is emotional abuse and its impact, so that you know you didn't deserve that. And then there are steps after that that are processing those feelings. That, like say for example, you fall in the street and you get all dirt inside. If you just come in and you cover it up, put a bandage over and go, I'm not looking at this, then it's going to get septic and seep into other areas of your life. You've got to actually clean it out, take out those things, the bits of dirt and tar inside of them. And that process is like squirmy and awful and horrible. But if you don't do it, it seeps into everything. Intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, depression, anxiety, because it hasn't been cleaned out properly. And then afterwards, you need to rebuild yourself of doing the things that you love, becoming proud of yourself, seeing what your gifts are. But all of those stages are really important. 1, the awareness of emotional abuse and the impact. 2, processing what was there, what happened, the emotions, the beliefs, the thoughts, the behaviors that imprinted in you. And then regrowing yourself to becoming who you want to be. And that process, you think, of the impact of emotional abuse happened over 20 years. This healing won't just take a 10-day workshop. It's going to take more than that to learn those different skills and heal those and rebuild yourself. So it isn't a quick fix, but it is such a worthwhile pursuit in healing yourself. So any time that you've been blanked, had no interest in yourself, expected to behave beyond yourself and then shouted at because you didn't get it right, that would impact your self-worth. And if you've been blamed and scapegoated and all the emotions taken out on you, that would make you feel like you're worthless. So I hope that helps you understand that. I've just done a client session from 9 to 10 where I was speaking, and now doing it again, my body's like, I can't speak anymore. So I'm sorry for the coughing, everybody. All right. So let's go to question number 3. For those of you who've just joined, if you are in the Tame the Triggers workshop, the link is above if you want to ask a question. And for those of you who haven't joined the Tame the Triggers workshop and you'd like to join, just click the link above. And I'm doing 2 Q&As where you'll be able to ask your questions next week. All right, so let's go to question number 3. How can I heal when a child access order forces me to have to go through evidence of my abuse and allows my abuser to use my child to continue abusing me? So there are 2 different things that are going on here. One, it's extremely, I just want to acknowledge you for what you're going through. It's excruciatingly hard to heal when what is going on, I apologize for putting in a lozenge that it might now sound funny, like I'm a bit drunk, but it's just in the hope that I'm not going to cough the way through the session. It's extremely hard to heal when you're in the middle of abuse. Because then you're being re-triggered in each moment by your child, by the abuser. What's essential for you now is to create 2 things. 1, a sense of safety in yourself that you can go into, whether it's a safe physical place, and we'll look at that next week, or it's an imaginary place, so that you can find places to be able to feel calmer, more safe in your own skin. The other thing is to be able to ground yourself when you are losing it because you're being abused, of being strong and letting yourself know you don't deserve this, it's not okay. And then when you're having to go through the process again, you need a sense of protection. And And in the Overcome Emotional Abuse program that I'll be sharing about at the end of next week, it's my signature 8-week program where we go through healing from abuse. And in that, we've got a video meditation on growing a protector, another video on a supporter and an encourager, so that you have a sense of protection, whatever you were going through. Same as the client that I worked with today, of bringing a protector into those moments of abuse so that you don't feel alone. So some clients use me as a protector, imagining me going into moments with them so you don't feel alone. Other clients have created large dogs or other animals, like somebody has a dolphin. I've got like Dumbledore, but he's got a staff. And if there are things that I'm going into that feel scary, I'll take that protection with me, and he will clear the energy so that I feel bold and brave and strong and true to me. So it's really important to get that sense. And then you also want to grow regulation tools so that as you're feeling heightened, you can go through it. In terms of dealing with a child who has learned to abuse you through somebody who's being abusive, I had that with both of my children, not physical abuse, but with emotional abuse, of where my mum and my ex would say things to my daughter like, your mother's useless, she's pathetic, you deserve a better mother than she is. And my daughter would come home and tell me I was a liar, there no abuse had ever happened. And so what I, instead of making my daughter wrong at all, I would empathize with her and I would let her know, this is excruciating for you, darling, to hate me and to be taught to hate me, because you are made from me and half of me, and that must just be excruciating for you. And it took her a lot to get safe of telling me how it was being torn between these different people who were teaching her to hate me. And I just committed that whatever she threw at me, she would tell me I was a useless mother. She would tell me in publicly that she hated her life, because even though we just had like an amazing day out and she told me that was the best day out ever, she would then tell people publicly she hated living with me. It was awful. She didn't love me. She, this poor little girl. And then I would go inside and just say, sweetie, you're really struggling. You said to me it was the best day ever, but you're telling them that you hated it. There must be such conflict inside of you where you're hearing these different parts of you. Tell me about that, lovely. How is that for you? So I was just completely empathetic and present to her. And if I'm totally honest, the 2 books that were my Bibles were How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, and Siblings Without Rivalry. I've read each of those at least 5-10 times. Virtually nearly every year of my kids' lives, I read those books. And because I hadn't grown up with that empathy and I didn't know how to do it. And then the other book that would be really helpful is The Explosive Child by Ross Greene, that he teaches that no child is ever doing this on purpose. They're just doing what they can with the skills that they have. And your child has been taught to be abusive. They don't want to be this way. They want to be loving and kind. We all do. But that's the programming that they're getting. And on the other side of that, if you can stay empathetic, loving, a safe resource for them, where they can explore their feelings about that programming, they'll come out the other side. On the other side of that, my daughter finally said, Mommy, I don't want to see Daddy, and I don't want to see your mum anymore, because they lie about you and they make us not like you, and they chose not to see them. And after that, it was incredible of seeing how their friendships changed, of them going, we only want to play with the kind people. We don't want to play with mean people anymore who turn us against other people, because then they were aware of that themselves. So the more loving and strong and kind you say in yourself, the better it is for you. So there's a post here that says, my circumstances are a bit different in that at 15 I was in a relationship with a man of 21. So that's 6 years difference. And in most countries, the law is that if there's 4 years difference, if the person is 4 years different, it can be considered abusive in childhood. My parents didn't intervene, but I think that's because they thought they would push me into the relationship. The emotions and feelings surfaced about 2 years ago, and I'm really struggling. I don't know how to move on. So that makes complete sense. You know, a lot of parents believe they don't want to intervene because they'll push you into it. And when you've had physical and emotional abuse, it's excruciating. You know, my daughter got involved in a relationship that was emotionally abusive. And I didn't intervene in going, you have to break up with him. What I did is I sat her down and I said, let's look at what your ideal relationship is. How you'd like to be treated, how you'd like to be spoken to, how they'd relate to our family, how they'd support your dreams. And we went through, and she wrote down 20 things. I think there are actually 19 things that she wrote down. And then we said, let's tick off every one that he is. And he was like 3 of them. And so I never said to her, you can't date him. I just said, let's look at what you are worthy and deserving of. And then I said, let's look at the list of what is emotional abuse. And so we sat down and looked at the abuse. And she was like, he does that, and he does that, and he does that, and he does that. And then she broke up with him, and he was furious. And I was so proud of her because it took so much to leave a toxic relationship. And there is a video that I've done with her on talking about red flags before she went to university. If anybody wants that, I'm happy to get that for you. But we looked at that, and that's how we did that. So if there are any parents here who are going through that, then that's what I recommend doing. And then in terms of working through it now, you want to be able to look at what the emotional abuse was and what the impact is. And then, like I was saying in the previous question, you want to clean out what those emotions are and see when are the points that are still there that have got trauma inside of them. Because those points, then if somebody looks at you the same way, or you hear a car going past and it was when you were sitting in a car that you were having an argument, then anytime a car goes past, it will flash that trauma. Because that's how trauma is stored in the limbic system and the amygdala, that when different sensory experience happens, it triggers those old trauma memories. One of the top therapies for PTSD is prolonged exposure. And I'm trained in that, and they focus a lot in that, in saying that where you avoid your trauma, where you avoid the feelings about it, the thoughts about it, the behaviors around it, and any experiences that remind you of it, that tends to create PTSD because of the avoidance of it. So what really needs to happen is we turn towards it, and we'll be looking at that in Tame the Triggers next week. So if you're not signed up, click the link and you can join us, and we'll be teaching those in the group next week. But you want to be able to turn towards it and see what was there, what was going on, and process the feelings that were there, so that you can clear those and get to a place where you are protecting, loving, validating, and empathizing with that 15-year-old you, so that you are met and you are supported And then in time, as it turns around, you can see how you can become an advocate for it, or you can be a stronger voice than you were because you've processed those things. So it is a journey, and it is not an overnight thing. I know that some people just want to like make a magic wand to take it all away. And healing isn't like that. Sorry, you've got a lozenge in my mouth to stop me coughing, and it's working, but it just sounds weird. So I apologize for that. So the feelings will come back if we don't process them, and we need to actually turn towards them. Like, I wrote a list of the different things that I had gone through and how they affected my beliefs, my thoughts, my behaviors, my friendships. And then I went through one at a time, processing what I felt in those moments, empathizing and validating and being a loving witness to myself. And that's not always easy to do. And I offer an Overcome Emotional Abuse program that I'll share with you next week. And I also do individual therapy. I do a mix of brain spotting, prolonged exposure, and attachment therapy. But there are countless therapists in the world who are incredible at that. And I would not recommend staying stuck in it. I would so recommend getting help so that you can really heal that. Oh, Angela, I'm glad to say thanks for letting me know. I guess I can hear it because it's right by my ears. All right, I hope that answers your question, Alison. All right, so let's go to the next one. Question, I guess that will be question number 4 now, if we include Alison's question as question number 3. So I would like to know how to deal with grief from suicide. All right. So I haven't gone through these questions, so I'm just answering them without having read through them. So when somebody has committed suicide, often, if you look at the stages of grief that we go through, we go through denial at the start, and then there's bargaining. So denial is, I can't believe they've died. That just can't have happened. I can't believe it. And there have been situations of stories of people who have had families who've died from suicide, and they never have the funeral because they just don't want to believe it. That's a reality. The next is bargaining. If I could have done this, then they wouldn't have died. If I could have said this, if I could do this, they'll be back. If I could, and that's very typical. Then there's anger at other people, anger at yourself, anger at the world. All of that makes sense. And then there is depression, where you just feel completely flat, dead in yourself. And then it goes through grief and acceptance. So in that whole place, you can notice where you are in that cycle of grief after that. And I want you to know that it is somebody's right to choose to end their own life. I don't think that there's any shame at all in somebody choosing to end their own life. It's their choice. For me, when I've got clients who say that, I let them know it's completely their choice. And in that, they feel such freedom. And I've never had a client who's committed suicide, because I don't ever try to stop them, because when we do, they often will flee further. I have always just accepted it's your life choice, and it's a valid choice. If life has got too much, it's a valid choice. And that is their choice. And so the first start for me is accepting that. That's their choice. If they're mentally ill, it's really, really hard, but that still is their choice in that moment. And the mental illness is taken over. But when you're in that, to accept that, that is what is there. And then there's often a lot of guilt and shame that people have of, I didn't do enough to support them and help them. And so then you need to talk to their souls of apologizing and saying, I realize I didn't do enough for you. And I'm sorry that I didn't do enough for you. And if I could go back, I would have done this and this and this and this. So of communicating with them. And then the other thing that a lot of clients have found helpful is turning towards it and going, I want to now find a way to honor your life. So what is the essence of who they are? I would write a poem about them or do some art about them, of what you loved about their character, about who they are, and what were their dreams or their talents or their goodness in the world, and how can you bring those to life to honor them? So that instead of there just being the trauma and the grief around that, there is also an honoring of their life. And when we just stay stuck in that trauma of it, it's often only because we don't know how to work through it. We need to process what feelings there are. So I might get a piece of paper and go, put their name in the middle of it and go, these are the feelings that I feel around it. And then I want you to empathize with every one of those feelings. And then I want you to get another piece of paper and go, this is how I want to honor this person. This is who they were. This is what their dreams were. This is what was important to them. And this is how I'm going to honor their life. So it can be something like growing trees. It can be something like mentoring other kids. It can be joining the Samaritans so that you're giving time back to other people who might be doing that so you can support them. Whatever it is that feels right for you, everybody is completely different. So what is the thing that honors and is right for you? So I hope that helps you in understanding that things can change. It won't always be like this, but things stay the same if we don't turn towards it and face it. So often we think that if we run away from something, it will magically, time will heal everything and it will get better. That isn't the reality. Often if we avoid something, we start to get triggered on the external world. Our body starts to process what happened because we're not facing it. So we get fibromyalgia or other physical ailments because we're not processing it and forcing our body to process it. So we want to consciously choose to turn towards it. And in one of the Tame the Triggers lessons, we'll be looking at how to respond to the different parts within ourselves. So if you're not signed up, come and check that out, and we'll be going through that again. And I wanted to apologize to you. I want to share that I was suicidal. I think that it was about a decade ago. It might be sort of 8 or 9 years ago. And so for any of you who are suicidal, I was so there, and I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want them to save me. I wanted to die because I felt my kids would be better off without me. And that I didn't deserve to lie. I was surrounded where they were seeing my family and then coming back and telling me I was pathetic, I was useless, that my kids deserved a better mother, and I started to believe them. And it was a really excruciating time for me and for my kids. It was hard for them to see me like that too. And the things that helped me in that moment, and I know this isn't answering your question, but I'm also aware that there are a couple of people here who are suicidal. So, and I said to myself, instead of killing me off, what in the world is toxic and unhealthy that is making me feel this way that I need to end? And that's what took me to ending my connection with my family and my ex. And it made me end friendships where I felt like they didn't care for me and made me feel like I don't matter. And as I did that, and I didn't have these constant voices that were telling me that I wasn't good enough, that I was useless, I was able to turn to the people who did love me, who were saying they wanted me here, who cared for me. So that was one part of it, is removing people who were making me feel like I wanted to die. And the other side of it was processing the trauma that I'd had in childhood and knowing this is the impact of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Folk who had sexual abuse and physical abuse are 3 or 4 times more likely to attempt suicide, whereas folk who've had emotional abuse are 6 or 7 times more likely to attempt suicide, because when you have emotional abuse, you feel like you're invisible, you don't matter, and you don't deserve to be alive. So when I realized that, I knew I had to fight for myself to overcome this, because I was not going to let the abuse in the past dominate who I was and take over. That I was going to become, I was going to change that in myself and not be emotionally abusive to myself. And it was actually my daughter who said, Mom, can you imagine if you turned this around and you lived and you created an amazing life, how many clients you'd be able to help who were feeling that same way? So it's truly thanks to my daughter that I'm alive, because she said that. The other thing that I read and she reminded me of, because we'd been speaking about it a few months before, is don't make a permanent decision on a temporary emotion. And that was really, really helpful to remember. So those were the 3 things that turned me around, was killing off the things that were making me feel like I should kill myself. I didn't harm anybody. I just removed myself from all of those relationships. Next is process those feelings from the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that made me feel awful. So I got therapy. I personally did EMDR therapy. On the one hand, it gave me severe migraines, but on the other hand, it cleared the PTSD that I had. And then third, I got this sense of who can I serve to make a difference to, that gave me a compulsion to live, that gave me a reason to live. So I hope that those of you who are feeling suicidal know that there is just incredible life on the other side, where I look back, where I had complex PTSD and was really, really struggling in myself, numbed out, suicidal, eruptive and triggered all through the day, having car accidents, often tripping, falling, smashing my head. I would open the cupboard, get something out the dishwasher, stand up, forget the cupboard was open, smash my head on the cupboard. There was just so much pain. And sometimes I would do that 3 or 4 times a day because my brain was just not functioning because of the complex PTSD. I don't have that at all. I can't remember the last time that I hit my head clearing the dishwasher. There's so much more awareness and clarity. I haven't had a car accident in years. There are so many things, my life is just so much more peaceful and easier, and there's so much love that surrounds me. So any one of you who are going through PTSD, things can change. It does get better. It just takes, so often we avoid what the issues are rather than turning towards it and facing it and processing it. And that might feel scary, but it's kind of like I said before, if you cut open a wound because you graze on the tarmac, you clean that out. Otherwise it goes septic. If we don't clean out the emotional wounds of the past, then it goes septic in ourselves and turns us against who we are. And I don't want that for any one of you. It's far healthier to clean it out and see that was abuse, this is the impact, this is how it made me feel, and work through those moments so that you can empathize and be with that and process it to clear out that toxicity from your system. For those of you who have not signed up to the Tame the Triggers workshop, The link is above. And for those of you who have signed up, you've got the capacity to ask questions. If you look up, you will see the question thing, and I will check if there are any more questions. All right. So if nobody asks any more questions, there's one more question left. Okay. This person says, I can identify when I feel certain emotions. However, in processing them, it always ends up to me feeling angry as the only emotion. Is this a trigger response? And is there a way to allow myself to process what I'm not aware of? So often, there are two things that may be going on here. One, in your family growing up, were you taught that anger was the only emotion that was allowed? In my family, the boys were allowed to express anger with no consequence. My brothers could hit me, they could shout at me, they could do anything. And I was always told, well, what did you do to upset them? But if I ever expressed anger, that was not allowed, and I was told I should be sweet and nice and happy. So I don't know about you. Were you treated like that too? Was there sexist overtone in what emotions were allowed for you? There certainly was in my family. But I know that my brother found it very uncomfortable to get angry, to get upset at all. So as soon as he was feeling emotional, he would punch somebody, or he would get angry, because anger was an acceptable emotion for a man. But sadness, grief, jealousy, hurt, those were unacceptable, so, and not allowed because they were deemed weak and useless. And so as soon as he defaulted to any emotions, any other emotions, as soon as he felt any other emotions, he would default to anger. So that is one thing that it could be happening. The other thing that it could be happening is that your anger is a protector, and you don't feel yet safe within yourself to explore your feelings. So when you are feeling something, your anger comes up as a protector so that none of the other feelings feel unsafe. So your anger, as soon as you're feeling something, anger comes up like, I'm not going to allow you to feel these other things, because when you felt them as a child, you were shamed, you were negated. Like Mandy says here, don't be so silly. If you felt something, oh, stop being silly, you shouldn't feel that. So if you were emotionally abused when you felt something, your anger might be a defense mechanism or a survival tactic that you learned as a child to protect yourself from these other emotions. So it comes up going, I'm furious, as a protector to make all these other feelings that are more vulnerable feel safe underneath you. So I want to, what is healthy first is to honor this anger and see why it's there. So I would turn to the anger and say, thank you for coming. I appreciate you. What are you here for? What do you need from me? What is your purpose here? So I would write down those questions that I've just asked, and I would go through them and see what is the purpose of your anger, and really meet that anger. And then I would ask your anger if it can give you a bit of space so that you can talk to the other emotions. The other emotions will hide if they don't feel safe. So if they feel like you now, because you've internalized the emotional abuse you had as a child, the other emotions will hide if you feel like you are not safe. So the things that you need for feelings to feel safe enough to come up is that they need empathy, they need curiosity, they need welcoming. Dan Hughes has a perfect word that he uses, which is place. I'm trained in Dan Hughes's attachment family focused therapy, and he is such a great man working with kids who were adopted. And he said place, which is playful, loving, accepting, curious, and empathetic. So if you can respond to anything that you're feeling with acceptance, empathy, curiosity, and kindness and love, then those feelings will feel safe enough to come out and be explored. But if you are hiding, if you're making yourself wrong, you're telling yourself you shouldn't feel like that. Like I was talking to somebody yesterday who was saying, oh, whatever she feels, she goes, why am I thinking that? Did that really happen? Is that okay? I'm sure I'm just making that up. In doing that, you're gaslighting yourself. And then the feelings don't feel safe. And then the anger will come up furious that you're gaslighting yourself. So check out, that might be happening. I don't know personally what is happening, but those are two options that could be happening. One, you were socialized that anger was appropriate and all other emotions should be hidden. And the other thing is that anger is being like a protector of these other emotions. A third option is that your anger is a signal that something is not okay for your soul. It could be that somebody has violated you. It could be that it wants you to set a boundary, that it wants you to find your voice. And until you do that, it's not going to allow you to access those other emotions. So really communicate to your anger and see, why are you here and what are you needing, so that we can explore those. So in order for your anger to feel like, she's got the capacity or you've got the capacity to face those emotions, it wants to see that you've got the capacity to make those emotions safe, process them, empathize, validate, accept, and be curious about them. And when you've got those skills, then the anger won't be so volatile, because it feels like you were doing the conscious labor, the emotional labor to work through what is there, so it doesn't have to be this firefighting protector. So I hope that helps. I'm going to check if there are any other questions while I've been here. No, there are no more questions. So that is the final question. If anybody on this call now has a question, I'm happy to answer. For those of you who have not signed up, the link is above. Come and join us in the Tame the Triggers workshop. Next week, I'm doing 2 more Q&As, so you're able to ask any personal question and I'll come live publicly and answer it anonymously. And for those of you who are in the Tame the Triggers workshop, if you look above this video, you'll be able to see the link in the private group to where you can ask questions. Such a pleasure. I'm so glad that you're here at 8 o'clock tonight and Monday to Friday next week as well. I'll be doing the recordings of each lesson a day, where we're looking at different aspects of triggers and how to love yourself so that you are calmer and more resourced, so you don't get triggered and live from a place where you're empty and struggling, and where you're more resourced and empowered. And then next week also, after the calls, after the lessons, so hopefully by next week I will be completely well and my throat will be back to normal. We will be doing a VIP coaching. For those of you who take on, it's just £27, take on the VIP coaching, you'll be getting half an hour's coaching every evening after I've made those calls. So I hope you'll come and join us on those. And I think with those, or those of you who want to join the VIP, we'll let you know. Oh, exciting. I hope that the wedding is lovely and you have a lovely time at the wedding. Sending you so much love, everyone. If you've got a question, ask the question. If you're in Tame the Triggers, then post it in the Q&A thing. Otherwise, just post it here quickly and I will... I'll hang around for another minute. It takes a while for things to post, but just quickly post it. If anybody's got a question, I'm happy to answer. Got another couple of minutes and I'm happy to answer you. I want you, each and every one of you on the Tame the Triggers workshop, to feel met, to feel loved, and to gain the skills to know that you are so worth loving and that you can cherish yourself and give yourself the love that you've always deserved. So maybe while we take a moment for whoever is the person who's typing up, in 1 minute I'm going to leave, but if it's typed up by then, I want to be able to answer you. But I just want each and every one of you to really breathe into yourself and acknowledge yourself for doing this work, because it's not easy and it takes bravery and courage to face the things that have been hard on ourselves. So the first question here is, can anger be hereditary? For sure. But thank God there's a thing called epigenetics. So of course anger can be passed down through not only just through genes, but also it can be passed down in nurturing. If you're brought up in an angry environment, it's highly likely that you'll either become angry or hide your voice because you don't want any of that. But epigenetics, I don't know if you've heard of epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of showing that how the environment changes alters the expression of your genes. So, for example, if you are in a tense, toxic, emotionally abusive environment, your genetic makeup will express itself in a different way. So it might be that you are reactive, that you become emotionally abusive yourself. But if you change your environment, and this is why changing your environment is so essential when you're healing from abuse, if you change your environment and you go to a place that's safe, loving, warm, accepting, kind, and caring, it changes the expression of your genes and you can become healthier and happier. But then as soon as you get into an environment where it's toxic, those old genes will come to play. So then you need to remove yourself, get yourself into a safe situation and make better choices of discerning who is healthy or not to be around. So absolutely, anger can be hereditary. So, when we are looking at it, so how do you tame anger? That was a follow-up question for that. You need to learn to work with your anger and see. We've just done a whole, one of the questions was on anger too, and I shared a lot about working with your anger, so it might be worth going back, and if you've just come now to view it. I have had a big process with anger because I was getting angry. Like one day I decided to count how many times I got angry. It was 15 one day, another day way more than that, and I forgot to count because I was so stunned and shocked by how angry I was. And so I had to learn to meet that anger and work through it. And so instead of taking it out on people, you first have to learn when it is tiny, like a little bit of a whisper, and you can feel yourself getting tense, to meet it when it's small instead of when it's really big. We look at that in Tame the Triggers next week. And then it's also learning to turn towards it, process it in an embodied way so that you are noticing it in your body and releasing it and discharging it. That in the Overcome Emotional Abuse program, we look at how to discharge and regulate that. We'll be sharing about the Overcome Emotional Abuse program at the end of the week next week. So we have a lot more tools in that, and 8 weeks to practice them and go through them in that. I can feel my voice is getting tired. So those are just a couple of things that are really important with anger. We look at next week of catching it when it's small. The other thing is really, like I said, changing your environment and then learning to process it and express it in a creative way rather than a destructive way, while you still are very angry. Like, I'm not an angry person anymore. I was a hugely angry person because I was in a toxic environment. And And I had all the processing of childhood to come through. So you need to clean out the stuff that happened in childhood so you're not getting so triggered around the stuff that is going on now. And then you need to learn to create with the anger. So I would draw, I would dance, I would make the sounds of my anger, so that instead of taking it out on somebody, I was owning it and tuning into it and processing it. So I hope that helps. There are a lot of stages, and it's not a quick, easy question to say, how do I work through it all? Because there's so many different aspects to anger. Anger is just delicious and beautiful as a force. It's also understanding what is it there for, and what are the skills that you don't have that are frustrating you, so you explode. So it might be that you don't have communication skills, you don't have boundary skills, you don't know how to say no, you don't know how to express your needs right. And so it comes out as an explosion where actually maybe your boundaries were violated and you didn't know how to say, that makes me feel uncomfortable, please don't do it. So you just scream out. So anger has very many factors to it. And one book that might help is called The Explosive Child. Even though you're an adult, it's really helpful in seeing what are the skills that you don't have. So this person said, I've sorted a lot of things out in my life. I've moved away from my mom, out of her reach, 2,000 miles away. But this week I saw it happen before my eyes, a woman bullying her child into doing something they didn't want. They did not want to know. And I was immensely triggered. It threw me back. I started crying. It felt like I was happening to me. And how do I deal with this? So what's really important, we can move away to the other side of the world. I'm like 10,000 kilometers from my family. But unless you process what happened in childhood, other things in the world will trigger you to remind you of that. So what's important, just before I was talking about if you avoid what happened, it comes out. Anything in the senses where you look at something that's similar, you hear a song that's similar that reminds you, it will trigger that trauma. But we try to run away from it, like moving away, but that doesn't heal the trauma. That takes away the source of it, but we actually have to turn towards the trauma. And if you rewatch this video, if you've just come, you'll hear that I've gone through how to do that. So you can rewatch this video and you'll be able to do that. But if you get triggered in a moment like that, you can make yourself safe. You can let yourself know that what that child is going through is not okay, and it's not you, it's not happening now. And this is a feeling memory of how you would have felt then. And that really gives you an indication of how you felt as a child, but you weren't allowed to express it then. So you can then empathize with yourself and say, this was really hard for you. That must have been so scary, and I'm so sorry you went through that. And then, like I've been saying, it's like a wound that's, you've fallen on the tarmac and you need to clean that out, because otherwise it goes septic and it seeps into everything in your experience, and it can get triggered really easily. And we look at that in the Overcome Emotional Abuse program of how to work through those things. But you can go back and listen more in this video. So somebody said, what happens if you do it to your spouse? Because you see, you need to get therapy or go to a program on how to not abuse your spouse. And you need to commit not to do that. So you need to go to therapy, and there are one of the best in the world is called the Freedom Project, which is a book on men who abuse their spouses. And so if you women also can read it, but it was designed for guys who were abusive to their wives and took their anger out on their wives. So the Freedom Project is one book that's really helpful for that. But it takes working through it and knowing they didn't deserve this and it's not okay. Okay, so let me just go through and say, okay, I am constantly trying to pacify and appease everyone, husband, teen daughter with mental issues, autistic son, and I don't want to be that person. I feel I'm becoming invisible. I don't want to be my mother either. And it's hard finding the balance I struggle with. I really get you. You know, I'm a mom with 2 neurodiverse kids. I've got neurodiversity myself, and I was always trying to make everybody else happy and forgetting about myself. If you're not signed on to the Tame the Triggers workshop, come and join us, because that's what we've been looking at this week, of treating ourselves like we matter. So I'm not sure if you are in the Tame the Triggers workshop, and if you are, then do the lessons. If you're not, then join the program, because that's exactly what we're teaching about, is that you matter. I'm just going in to see. Oh, you are in the Tame the Triggers workshop. Okay. So I want you to do the lessons of really noticing those things, of seeing how you put yourself last. And this is the impact of emotional abuse, where you feel like you don't deserve to be put first. And it's excruciating, because you always feel like you have to work really hard to get scraps of love. And it takes making a stand to yourself and saying, I need to fill myself up so that I can give from overflow. I'm trying to think of what day that I can have a look on what day that that's not today. Today is a different lesson. I think that it's next week on Monday. We look at how important it is to fill you up, so that you are giving from overflow rather than empty. So we'll be doing that on Monday. So if after Monday you are not clear, come and ask that question again, because I think that Monday will answer that. I don't want you being invisible. That's the impact of emotional abuse. I just do want to say something that really helped me and my family. John Gottman studied incredible relationship. He did massive research in thousands of relationships. And he saw that there were 4 ways that people respond to us wanting to be loved. So I'll go through those with you. And I literally wrote them out, and I put them on the wall in the dining room. And then we would ask each other every day, how have we been to each other, of noticing each other? And John Gottman described these as bids for love, that if you say to somebody, hey, this is what's going on in my life, there are 4 ways to respond. The article that I read was just saying something like, look, there's a bird. So the first way is proactive destructive. And the person goes, you think I give a fuck about a bird? Why would you interrupt me to show me the bird? So that's proactive destructive. I don't care about you and you're in my way. Stop it. It's abusive. So that's proactive destructive. The second way is a person says, oh, look at that bird. And the person goes, ugh. That's passive destructive. You're not like proactively letting the person know you have any interest or that you hate them. But it's just like, God, I can't be bothered with this. And it lets you know, just that makes you feel like you're invisible. Okay? And that's destructive, because it leaves the sense in your soul that they don't care about you. The third way, the person says, oh, look, there's a bird. And the person responds, oh, yeah, I see. So there isn't this hugely negative feeling towards you, but this is passive constructive. So it's like not destructing you, but it's not building you up. It's just letting you know, yeah, I see it too. And then there's a fourth way. Look, there's a bird. Oh, wow, I know how much you love birds. Shall we look it up and see? So if you're somebody who's got no interest in birds, but your spouse or your child does, you encourage their interest in whatever it is. Like, you matter to me. I'm interested in caring in what you feel. But if your husband and you grew up in emotional abuse, your range of responsiveness will most frequently only be in the 3 toxic ways of proactive destructive, passive destructive, and passive constructive, in John Gottman's terms. And all of those are toxic. None of those lead to you feeling loved and cared for. The only thing that makes you feel genuinely loved and cared for is proactive responsive. And so we would ask at dinner, how have we been like this? And so if my son was just going, to me, I would say, sweetheart, can you just tell me what response you think this is? And he'd go, Mom, sorry, that was passive destructive. And I can imagine that made you feel unloved. But that's taken years for him to get to where he was capable of doing that, because I had empathized with him and let him know when people did things to him. That was proactively destructive. That must have made you feel extremely unloved. And so me teaching him of experiences around him, then he could give that to me. And slowly over time, things have shifted where he is more proactive and more loving, and they actually consider me as a person. What it will take from you is expressing what your needs are. Throughout my kids' lives, we've had family meetings where we sit down and we say, what is working in our lives? Why is that working? What is the vision of what we're wanting to create? What are the blocks in the way? And what is the one step we're going to take towards that? And we did that frequently. I was doing it since my daughter was 2 years old, of where we would have family meetings of what we're going through. And at that point, I was a foster carer with special needs kids, and we would sit down with all of them every week when there were kids who were going through a lot. When it was just me and my kids, we didn't do them quite as often because there weren't as many issues to work through. But as soon as there are issues, we have family meetings and we work through, hey, how is everybody feeling? How's everybody doing? We empathize with everybody else. We see what they're wanting to grow, what skills they need, and we work through it together. So we're all supporting each other and have each other's backs. And one of in Siblings Without Rivalry, they have a process of working through problems. And I would often do that with my kids if there were an issue between them. But I would also bring that up as, there's an issue in this family where I feel like I'm invisible, that I'm looking after everybody else's needs. And I want to be able to look after your needs, but I also want everybody to be considering my needs as a human being too. And then have a discussion about it. Instead of blaming them and making them wrong, you can say, I realize I'm not good at communicating what I need. I'm not good at this, and I'm going to work on this, and I would love all of you to work on noticing what I need and asking and caring about my experience so that I don't feel like I'm a slave as a mother, but we're all loving and caring for each other. So I really hope that helps you. That's been what's helped me along the way, so that I feel met and loved. Oh, Amelia, that's really lovely. I love that he's been listening to the thoughts on anger. That feels really delightful. And if you're still listening, Peter, I used to have so much fun with my anger too. It sounds a little bit weird, but what I used to do is I used to try and find the sound that my anger felt at that moment. And we would do it with my kids too, so that my kids didn't feel that my anger was ever their problem. So if I was feeling angry, I would say, I'm feeling really angry, like it's swirling inside of my stomach or inside of my chest. It's hard inside of my chest. Let's try and find out what movement and sound my anger is feeling. So my kids would go, is it feeling like, ah? And I'd be like, no, that's too high. It's like, and so they'd go, is it like, whoa? And I'd be like, no, that's too tense. And they'd be like, is it like, roar? And I'd be like, oh my God, that made my anger smile. That was just like what my anger smiled like. And then we'd go, okay, let's try and find out what shape and stomp my anger is. So is it like, or is it like, oh? And then as soon as we found it, we'd be like that. And then we'd all make the sound of the anger. And I would do it with my kids too. If they were angry, we would find the shape and the shape of our bodies, the movement of the anger and the sound of the anger. And then when we found that, the anger would just be like, ah, you found me, you're making the sound of me. And it would just make the anger feel so much better. The other thing that we would do, Peter, with the anger is that in every room in the house, or every floor, so upstairs and downstairs, we had some paper and we had these big block crayons. Let me see if I can see any here. Oh, I've moved them, or somebody has moved them, but I don't see them. I normally have them right here. And they're the little block crayons. And I would sometimes close my eyes, feel where my anger was in my body, and then I would get the piece of paper and I would allow my hand to pick out the color without me looking of what my anger looked like. And then I would just take it and go, and then I might open my eyes, but I would just let the anger draw. So I'm not stopping it. I would just let the anger, and sometimes it would be like, and I would do that often on the carpet and protect the carpet with something, like with a towel or something, so it could go through and poke holes, not to damage the carpet. I would protect the carpet to make sure the carpet was okay. And then I would go, so that then I wasn't hurting anybody else, because nobody else must be hurt by my anger. But I want to meet my anger and love at my anger and really be kind to my anger, because I had gone through so many hurts and pains that when somebody did something and it reminded me of that, then all the anger would erupt inside of me. So I would just like go, or I would go, and my daughter said to me, Mom, when you're just sitting nicely next to the table or next to the piece of paper, you're not going to be able to get your anger out. You need it on the floor, and you need to go on your hands and knees and go, and get all your anger out. And that just totally one day made my anger completely disappear, because I was really, really meeting it. And as you're looking at the anger and drawing it out like that, you might get memories and thoughts of what come up, of where that anger is coming from. And then you can be kind to those thoughts and say, no wonder you're angry. Makes so much sense that you're angry. You've gone through so much. It makes sense that you're feeling so much anger. And then your anger just goes, oh, I'm not wrong to be angry. And it can really, really feel met and loved. And then the anger just evaporates. Like 10 years ago, I was angry every day, 10, 15, 20 times. Now I can't think of the last time I was angry. Oh, when was it? Oh, okay, it was a couple of weeks ago. But then before then, it was months. I just don't feel angry like that anymore, because instead of running away from the anger, I turned towards the anger and said, I want to know why you're so angry, and I want to be your friend. And then as soon as I made friends with my anger, instead of feeling bad and wrong and ashamed that I was angry, I really just wanted to be my anger's friend and understand, why am I so angry? Something must have happened to me to be this angry, and I'm going to meet it, and I'm going to love me, and I'm going to be kind to me, and I'm going to be kind to the anger. I'm not going to hurt anybody else, because nobody else deserves to be hurt. I don't want to pass on the anger to them like it's a big hot potato so they get burnt by it, because then I feel bad that I've hurt them. I want to process the anger and work through all the anger so the anger feels loved. And when the anger feels loved, it just totally, totally disappears. So I'm not angry like that anymore. Now if I get angry, it's because something in the moment has happened and I can deal with it. So where I was angry a couple of weeks ago is I was angry just like what this mother has said of my son not noticing about my needs. And I said to him, what about me? Like, you're just talking at me like I don't matter. What about me? And then he went, all right, Mom, I'm sorry. I can see that I wasn't really thinking about your needs at all. I was just thinking about me and not actually thinking about you at all. And you're a person too, and you really matter too. So I hope that helps, Peter, and I'm sending you love. Okay, so here's another question. What happens if you don't remember your childhood? So that is very, very, very frequent. Majority of the people that I work with who've had abuse in childhood don't remember it at all. And where we don't remember it, it comes out in feelings and behaviors in the present. So if you're having random extreme emotions now, which could be big feelings of numbing, hold on, I can just feel that there's somebody who's listening to this call that's like really tense. It feels like your body is being constricted. Like it feels like, I can feel it inside of me, like it's really, really tight. Whoever that is who's listening, I really want you to just tune in and see, like you're really holding yourself tightly. I want you to just allow yourself to see what your body needs and move your body. I can feel you really, really tense in yourself. So I want you to take a deep breath, see what breath you need. It feels like you're really holding your breath a lot. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better. It feels like there's sort of stabs inside of you. Whoever that might be, I just want you to breathe for a little bit because it's really, really strong for you right now. And I want you to be kind to yourself. There's also somebody I can feel who's got like a headache or something going on. I want you to breathe into that and be really kind to yourself. So what happens if you don't remember your childhood? The things that are happening right now for you are triggers of what happened in childhood that haven't been met. And as you work through the extremeness of the things that are happening now for you, many people begin to remember. Like when I'm doing a private session with somebody, frequently they have no memory of what happened. And then as we're doing the session, they will have flashbacks of what happened. Some people, some autistic people don't have the capacity, like their brain just doesn't work in images and flashbacks. So if you're autistic, you might physically not have memory at all. But you might have feelings that you're experiencing. And what is essential is that you grow the capacity for safety. You grow the capacity to process your feelings that are there. And you grow the capacity to respond to your feelings. And as you do that, frequently memories will come up. A lot of people avoid doing any of that because they don't want any of the memories to come up. The issue with that happening is that when you do that, then you run away from things and it keeps recreating, the scenarios keep recreating in your life, and you get flashbacks or triggers because you're not facing it. So it's really essential. You know, I think we live in a crazy world where nobody has taught us how to respond to the feelings that we have, how to empathize with ourselves, how to process our feelings, how to communicate our needs. We're pretty fucked up as a world where we don't have those skills. So these are skills that would really just give us so much safety and resolution in our lives. So I hope that has helped everybody. For those of you who are not in the Tame the Triggers workshop, and you have got a question to ask in the next Q&A, please look above the link in the Tame the Triggers group, and you'll see the place to ask questions. And those of you who want to join us, just click the link above. It's restoring.love/workshop, and you'll be able to join us on the next Q&A. So I hope that's been helpful, everybody. I'm going to go off and get some water or some warm tea for my throat, and I'm sending you love. I also believe that our local petrol station's got some petrol, so I'm going to pop off and get some petrol. All right, everybody, I'm sending you so much love. I'm grateful to be on this journey with you. I value you, and I'm proud of you for taking the action to face the things that are uncomfortable, triggering, traumatizing, so that you can empower yourself to really live a life that you love, where you can thrive. All right, everybody, see you in the next Q&A. And for those of you who are in the Tame the Triggers, I'll see you at 8 o'clock tonight. Come and join us if you're not in there. We would love to have you. It's just £7 and 10 minutes a day. Loads of love. See you on the other side.